My name is Jānis Siksnis. Now I'm acting Executive Director of Baltic Centre for Media Excellence. It's an organization which is supporting mostly journalists. We are working mostly with media organizations, organizing media trainings just to help journalists improve their professional skills, organizing public events in order to raise public awareness of what good journalism is. And also organizing different media literacy projects, also just to raise the public awareness of what media literacy really is and why you should have it in order to live in a democratic country. Well, media literacy, I don't. We mostly use the term critical thinking. I think that is what we are trying to do. We are educating both journalists and also the wider public that you always have to think when you see or read something which maybe seems suspicious to you, or maybe it seems very interesting, and then you are starting to think, is it really right or wrong? And I would say that media literacy is to be critical regarding whenever what you see or read. And that's why if we are talking about journalism, for example, I think that the key word for journalism is to be analytical. So I would say that, okay, it's always important to have good stories or good interviews, but you always have to have some element of analysis in this. Only then you can call it really a journalism. And that's also if you're talking about media literacy. So you have to be critical, you have to be analytical, and that's what we are trying to spread the word of this analytical critical thinking. I would say that the biggest problem for journalism, and this is also if we are talking about media literacy, that there is simply too much information all around us. I would say that there are too many sources of information, and to that extent I agree to those people who say that maybe now the journalism is as important as never before. Some people say that maybe you don't need journalism at all these days because you can find everything, almost everything on internet if you just Google something. But I think no, it's just the opposite, because I think we need now good journalists, good analysts, if we may say so, just in order to help people orient in this, informational mess or chaos. And that's, I think, that the biggest problem and biggest challenge is how to help people navigate, through all those oceans and seas of too much information. And we are not talking about those classical fake news. Everybody, when we're talking about media literacy, the first words that comes up to mind is those fake news or disinformation. But that's just a part of the picture. As I said before, I think that almost every person now is a source of content, especially if he or she is using social media. But besides that, you have very different and many media organizations, starting from traditional ones like radio, television, newspapers, and now we have very popular websites. Social media, of course, is a completely different story, but besides that, we have still many players of informational field, like, for example, the same public relation companies, which are also producing content, and you cannot say that they are necessarily wrong, that they are doing some fake news, but they are maybe just one-sided news, and you also have to educate people about this. And so what I wanted to say, that we are simply have too much information around us, and we just have to find the ways how to navigate all through this and see the light, at the end of the tunnel, the light of truth, if you can say so. That's one more, I think, challenge for all the journalists and all media platforms in these days, that on one hand you have a lot of tools that you had never had before, like social media, which provides you an opportunity to talk directly to your consumer, if you say so. So, I mean, like 20 years ago, when you were working as a journalist in printed newspaper, okay, maybe somebody could call you in your office, you know, via this traditional old telephone. Now, using social media, you can talk to people in the very, you know, the same second if you want to ask him or her somebody. So, but at the same time, you are under some pressure to be still not the best friend, but still kind of your teacher for that audience, for that consumer. So that's your mission as a journalist. That's again, I think that's all the opportunities and at the same time threats that, for example, social media are posing. Because on the one hand, you have far more better tools than before in order to find out what your audience are thinking about something, what is important to them. At the same time, although social media, they are very excellent tools if you want to spread some misinformation. So they work kind of, you know, in both ways. And the same you can tell about politicians. That on one hand, I think that the politicians, they are kind of, you know, scared of the social media, because that's another platform when people can tell everything about everybody. Of course, criticize politicians to tell whatever they want about something. At the same time, they are using this in order to spread their information, and sometimes this could be, of course, misinformation if they want to. So it is very, I think, complicated mechanism that we have around us at the moment, and that's why I'm getting back to what I said at the very beginning, that you have to be analytical. And that's why I think that we should invest more money, more resources, more knowledge in helping both journalists and also their audiences to become more analytical, more critical, not to just, you know, when you see some extremist opinion, not just to follow it and believe it, but think about it more. Is it really right what you are seeing or hearing? Opportunities and challenges. I think, well, the content for young people, I think it has always been a problem for media organizations for ages. Because it's very hard to follow, you know, those trends. They are changing so fast, and I think that during the last years you have it more about technologies, and that makes sometimes for media organizations more expensive to just to create some new gadget that young people right now are using. But again, the social media, it creates an opportunity for those young people to communicate, to engage, to take part in processes that, again, like some 15 or 20 years ago wasn't that easy for them. They didn't want to maybe to write letters to somebody or to just make a call. Now they can use Facebook and Twitter and express their opinion. They can be more socially active if they want to. It's far more easier for them to do this at the moment. And media organizations just have to use those good opportunities that social media provides. But at the same time, of course, we have this big problem that young people are more exposed, of course, to all those risks which comes from disinformation, because those fake news and disinformation cases, they more circulate, especially in those social media, and you have to closely follow what is going on there. And then I think that is the biggest, I would say, challenge in the upcoming years, to really understand what is going on, not only in Facebook and Twitter. I think those are, we can say, maybe already, you know, old generation, old technologies, but now we are talking more about WhatsApp and Instagram and all those technologies, all those, artificial intelligence things that we have in our phones and things like that. And young people are using those platforms in order to communicate between themselves. And if somebody wants to change their minds, they can use this as well. And I think that will be the next task for media organizations to be there, to spread quality content in those platforms and communicate with people. Yes, you just have to provide the platforms that are really relevant for them at that time, particular time that when you're talking to them. And of course, it's not it's not worth to expect that they will use those traditional media. I think that they don't see that linear television anymore at all. I think, but. First, of course, you have to let the young people themselves to be the content creators. You cannot take some, 40, 50-year-old who will make shows for them. Maybe in some cases it works, but in most cases it doesn't. But it will always be, I think, very expensive. You will need a lot of resources. To be open enough in order to provide them opportunities to express their opinions, so that they can use all those platforms that we cannot imagine at the moment that will follow in the next couple of years. But the most important is not to lose the connection with them when they are still kids and when they are still teenagers. You just have to show them that the media, the journalists, of course, the parents and teachers, that we are here, and if you need some help, we will be there, and then we can communicate, and we are open to contact you. I think that's the main thing.